companies are purposefully putting these microplastics into personal care products. Welcome back, everybody, to episode 24 of the Clean Kitchen Podcast. I'm Kyle.
I'm Kevin.
And Kevin, did you know that you may be consuming a credit card's worth of plastic every single week?
No, I did not.
Well, that's what we're talking about today. We're going to be talking about plastics, but specifically microplastics.
Yes, exactly. So microplastics might be a new word for you. So we're going to start with what the heck are microplastics. Then we're going to talk about their impact on your health. If you are consuming that credit card worth of microplastics, what does that mean? What is that doing to you? And then, of course, we're going to talk about some real life practical ways you can reduce your exposure to microplastics.
Yep. And going off that, like Kevin said, we're going to give you specific alternatives and swaps you can make to reduce your exposure because these are really harming our body in a negative way.
Yes.
So let's jump right into it.
Yes, let's start at, of course, the beginning of this. What are microplastics?
So microplastics are teeny tiny pieces of plastic, and they're smaller than 5 millimeters.
Okay.
So think of like a sesame seed.
Okay.
That's kind of what they're similar to in size. And think about it, like, you know, plastic bottles or plastic bags or toys, these things, they break down over time, but they don't completely disappear. They just break down and crumble into these really small pieces. And these small pieces are microplastics. Okay. So that is basically what microplastics are. And these little pieces, most of the time, you can't really see them with your eyes, but they're everywhere. They're floating in our oceans, our rivers. They're in our air. They're everywhere.
Yeah. Once you start to just look around in general about the amount of plastic around you, whether it's household products or clothes maybe that you wear, it's amazing how surrounded
food products, everything,
how surrounded you are by these plastics in general that eventually become microplastics.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into reducing your exposure to these plastics towards the end of the episode. But you can see right away how this is a problem. I mean, first of all, just there's a lot of microplastics in our ocean, which we're going to get into more later. But, you know, fish think this is food, and then they consume it, and then they get sick, and then maybe we're consuming that fish that ate these microplastics, and then we get sick.
Yep.
So it's really everywhere.
Yes. Okay. So that's what microplastics are. You mentioned a couple examples, like bottles maybe are a common source of plastics that we see. But are there other products that contain these microplastics?
Great question. So I was doing research for this, I was a little bit shocked at what I'm about to tell you. So there are 2 different types of microplastics, and I knew of one, but I didn't know about this other one. So the first one, which I didn't know about, is primary microplastics.
Okay.
Primary microplastics is when companies are purposefully putting these microplastics, these small plastic particles, also known as microbeads, into personal care products. So think of a face wash or a body wash that maybe has some exfoliating feature to it. This may be plastic, little pieces of plastic to basically make it feel like, you know, you're exfoliating your skin and it's killing those dead skin cells.
Yeah.
It's plastic.
I was going to ask you, why would a company do that?
Basically for the feeling of, hey, it feels like I'm really doing something to my skin here. And yeah, like I said, you're getting away, you're killing your dead skin, you're getting rid of your dead skin cells.
Okay. That it in itself is wild that a company would purposefully put these microbeads specifically into their products. Yeah. So what are some examples of types of products?
Oh, like a face wash, body wash. Also, like, and I don't know how much companies are doing this today. I hope now that we're realizing the impact of microplastics that this is becoming less prevalent. But another example is like toothpaste. Like people put in toothpaste for, again, the same reason. Like it basically just feels like you're cleaning your teeth a little bit extra.
Yeah.
Like this exfoliation, this like rubbing against your teeth.
Yeah, it's like grittier, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But then also in like different cleansers, like cleaning products. You know, if you have a spray or something, you're spraying it on your counter, maybe they'll put a little bit in there to, again, get that exfoliation process.
Yep. I remember,
scary,
not specific to microplastics, but for toothpaste, I used to just use like standard toothpaste, the ones that most people use. Yeah, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it would always like it bubbles up in your mouth, and you're like, man, I'm really cleaning my mouth good.
Yeah.
And you told me about another company called Dr. Bronner's.
Yes.
That has a less chemical,
More natural ingredients. Yeah.
And I switched to Dr. Bronner's, and if you do make that switch, the first thing you'll notice immediately is that it doesn't feel like there's all this like soap in your mouth.
It's like sudsy.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's less of that.
Yep.
And you're wondering like, why was the other toothpaste that I was using why is it not the same? Why is it so different?
Yeah.
And you told me that it's all because the other toothpaste, not Dr. Bronner's, are adding in like an artificial feeling of clean.
Yeah. There's no benefit to getting that sudsy feeling of your average toothpaste. It's just the feel like
mentally.
Exactly. Yeah. That specific ingredient, I believe, is sodium lauryl sulfate. Shout out Carly. She's the one who told me all about that. Sodium lauryl sulfate is that chemical that they put in normal toothpaste that gives it that sudsy feeling.
Yes.
And you won't find that in normal
or
natural toothpaste like Dr. Bronner's or Risewell, those sort of brands.
Yep. It's crazy. It's not the same here, but it's the same idea of a company's adding something that isn't value add.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's just all mental kind of.
Yeah.
It's that.
Marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that you mentioned primary microplastics. Is there something else then too?
Yep, secondary microplastics. Okay. So this is what I was most familiar with going into this podcast episode, which is, the fragments from plastic water bottles or bags, and it's basically deteriorating over time into these smaller particles, aka microplastics. But then something else that interested me was that there's a lot of these microplastics that can basically come off of your clothing when you're washing it. So if you put up a load of wash with synthetic clothing, specifically synthetic fibers like polyester or nylon, these can release these tiny, tiny fibers during the wash. And this is actually a significant source of the pollution in the oceans. That's how microplastics get into the oceans, is from when we wash our clothes that are made of synthetic materials. It breaks off these microplastics and they're in the ocean. Yeah,
this one is a little bit mind-blowing, I think, if you really think about it, because it's every item of clothing you wash, and it's every time you do it.
Right.
Which is an absurd amount of clothing across the country. If you really start to think about it, and all these little microplastics continuing to get into that water supply, impacting salt, impacting fish, impacting just how we go in that water. Are we getting microplastics through our skin? I don't know.
Probably not through our skin.
No.
It's difficult to absorb microplastics through skin.
Okay, so that's good.
This is something I was interested in as well.
Yeah.
It seems like it's more just orally.
Okay.
Like if you're eating it. I mean, if you drink some salt water on accident,
sure people do.
You're getting some microplastics.
Definitely been there.
Yeah. Big wave comes in.
Oh yeah. So you mentioned these secondary plastics. The one that really stands out to me is just like the clothing itself that are made from these synthetic fibers that include microplastics in them. Is that something that you're thoughtful of when you're purchasing clothes?
Recently, it has been. Yeah, this has been something I've been paying more attention to recently. I've been trying to buy, and we're going to get into more alternatives later, but cotton, 100% cotton clothing, because obviously that's natural. It doesn't contain these synthetic materials. So yes, that has been something I've been thinking about recently.
It seems like it's getting more popular, is thinking about the clothing you're wearing. Whether it's just a t-shirt or shorts or boxers, whatever it might be, thinking about how that impacts your hormones. We talked about endocrine disruptors before. That can be
for sure
one of those here.
Yeah, exactly. So not only, unfortunately, are you polluting the ocean with every single wash that you do that contains synthetic clothing, but also, like you just said, there's more and more studies coming out that are showing that these synthetic materials can negatively affect your hormones, because a lot of them contain chemicals like phthalates, which are endocrine disruptors and hormone disruptors. So a switch that I did make a few months ago was changing all of my underwear to 100% organic cotton underwear.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Because even if I'm wearing, I'm wearing synthetic material right now. This is synthetic polyester, but I'm wearing organic boxers.
Yeah. So like one layer of protection.
Exactly.
The other one too that I think of is bed sheets. And we talked about this on last week's episode, the gifts.
Yeah.
And one of our gift recommendations was 100% organic bed sheets.
Yeah, it was organic bamboo bed sheets, which is also natural.
There you go.
But they also have cotton.
Got it. Okay.
100% organic cotton bed
Yeah.
sheets. Yeah. Another
So-
thing, you're sleeping on every single night.
Hopefully 8 hours a night.
Hopefully 8 hours a night. In other words, a third of your life.
Yeah, there you go. That's kind of scary.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that ingredient or that material
Yes.
that you're touching for that third of your life
Yeah.
is hopefully not causing any harm.
Yeah. But also your clothes. I mean, you're
And
always,
your clothes,
you're always
yeah.
wearing clothes for
Yeah.
the other 2/3 of your life.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Well-
it's definitely something to pay attention to.
Yep.
And I think you're right. I think more people are waking up to it, I
Yeah.
guess you could say.
It seems to be trendy. I don't know if trendy is the right word, but
Yeah. I feel like it's just been it's we're just so used to it. Like it was kind of an overlooked topic. Like you don't really think about it.
Yeah.
Now it's like, wait a second. Yeah, I'm wearing synthetic clothing every day,
Uh-huh.
all day. Is that bad?
yeah.
So
This is one of those things that I think about when, like, if you're someone that's starting on your health journey, like a lot of this information can feel so overwhelming. I have to replace all of my clothes
Yeah,
right now.
right.
And the answer to that is no. It's
No.
something you have to do over time. I'm thinking about like my own health journey. Like the area that I personally started was food because it was something that was obvious and it was something I knew I was ingesting every day. And then I've started to swap out some of these microplastic areas that we'll talk about a little bit later. And food is, or clothing is something for me that's on the roadmap that I haven't fully gotten to yet.
Yep.
But for anyone feeling overwhelmed, me, someone that is very in the weeds on this, it's something I'm doing very gradually.
Yeah.
Is that the same way you approach it?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those are great points. I think it's the best. I think we did a previous top podcast episode about this, kind of like what order to do this in.
Yeah.
And I think diet and nutrition is definitely step number one.
Yeah.
It's like the easiest thing to change.
Yep.
And yeah, it's the easiest thing to control. So I'm with you. This is something. This clothing is something I'm just now learning about. So I'm slowly making these changes.
Yes.
I didn't throw away all my clothes.
Yeah.
The first thing I did do was throw away all my old underwear and,
There you go.
and boxers.
Yeah.
Because I had gotten organic ones. So that was basically step number one for me. That's basically all I've done.
Yeah.
I bought some organic shorts and things like that, but as we could see right now, like I'm pretty sure both of these are not 100% cotton.
Right.
I did buy some 100% cotton shirts recently, but yeah, gradual
Yeah.
changes.
So maybe that's a good place to start then is if you're looking to change out your clothing, underwear might be one of the
I think
first
that's
places.
the best place to
There you
start.
go. Okay.
100%.
All right. So maybe that's the takeaway
Yes.
there. Let's move into, we've learned about what microplastics are, but why is it that they're bad for us? Why is it that consuming microplastics either through our clothes or through food is bad?
Before we even get to the impact that these microplastics have on us, this is having a really negative impact on the environment. We just talked about all of these microplastics going into the oceans. I think it was every single load of wash you do with synthetic clothing releases 1,900 microplastic particles into the ocean. That's scary.
Yes.
So these fish and different creatures that live in the oceans can be mistaking this for food. And this is detrimental to their health. It can cause physical blockages in their body, digestive issues, and so many other problems, which we'll get into in a minute about the specific chemicals that are in these microplastics. But yeah, these are very toxic to wildlife. And not only that, but I always remember growing up, we would talk about how plastic can have an impact on wildlife in terms of like sea turtles getting stuck
Yes.
in them.
Yes.
Something like that.
Yeah. Like, I know people aren't a huge fan of the paper straws, but like the plastic straws, you'd always hear they get stuck in like a whale's blowhole or something like that.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Or like maybe a turtle would eat
Yeah.
the plastic straw.
What I always think is like the the whatever Gatorade would come in, like a 6-pack of
Yes.
Gatorade,
Yes.
like that.
Uh-huh.
I feel like we were always shown pictures of that or
Yes.
something, and then wildlife getting caught in it.
Yes.
So
You'd always have
that's
to
the
like
other-
cut those.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the other aspect to it. Not only are they ingesting it, but they're also it can impact their habitat.
Yeah.
And disrupt their habitat.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is absolutely a real impact, and that's happening to the environment around us, which indirectly or even directly has an impact on us by the food we're consuming.
Yeah.
So that is absolutely one area that's very real. Then you've also mentioned just the impact on us directly.
Yeah. So the main thing with these microplastics are the chemicals that they contain. So they can contain something called BPA, which we've talked about before, but this is a common chemical found in plastic, which has estrogen mimicking properties. So it can basically mimic estrogen in our body, which can lead to hormone disruption. Also, BPA has been linked to many other health issues, including reproductive disorders, heart disease, and also developmental problems in children. So a lot of negative things going on there. That's just one of the chemicals that we know about that is in microplastics.
Okay.
In plastic, just plastic in general.
Yeah.
But obviously is in these microplastics when they break down.
Yep. So if I'm hearing you right, then it's not necessarily the microplastics themselves that are harmful. It's the chemicals associated with them.
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, I think it's obvious that plastic in general we shouldn't be eating plastic. Probably isn't the best for us, but yes, specifically it's these chemicals that are found in plastic.
Interesting.
That's really, really harming us.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads me into the next chemical, which is phthalates. This one has gained a lot of traction recently. Not only is it found in plastic, but it's also found in a lot of personal care products and things like that, body wash, cleaning products, different household products. And phthalates are also known endocrine disruptors, which basically means that it's disrupting our hormones or mimicking our hormones in negative ways, which again can cause a range of different health issues, including reproductive issues, developmental problems, and it's even been linked to certain types of cancer as well. So not good.
Yeah.
And these microplastics are everywhere.
Yes. I was just watching a Joe Rogan podcast, and he had a doctor on, Dr. Shauna, I believe her name was, and she was talking about some studies she had done specifically related to phthalates and the impact that it has on, and her study was specific to male as well, male testosterone levels. And her conclusion was that it has a massive impact. Mothers that were consuming phthalates as they were pregnant, their male children had a lower testosterone count.
Wow.
So it flowed through to the baby. So something to be very conscious of here.
Yeah.
'Cause that can have a lot of long-term impacts. Before the baby is even born, it has almost like a delayed start in the testosterone levels.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, definitely.
Affecting the offspring. I
Yes,
guess.
exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. It flows through there.
Yeah, and we'll definitely have to do a full podcast episode about hormones in general and the importance that plays in optimal health.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, I'd say those chemicals are the main problem with microplastics.
Okay.
But also, like, another point is plastic didn't really become super popular until the 1940s, 1950s. So it really hasn't been around that long. So we don't know the long-term effects of plastic. Same thing with vegetable oil. Same thing with these processed sugars and these processed grains. They're so new. So we don't know the full effect that it has. And I have a feeling that it's not good.
Yeah.
It's not a good effect that these things are having.
Right. It's only been 80 years, you said. 80 years since plastics became mainstream. Think about things like vegetable oils that we've been consuming for such a short period of time that already are showing some really poor health benefits or detrimental health impacts.
Yeah, health impacts,
Think about things that have been around for such a long time. Salt, beef, those types of things that...
Yeah. Eggs, fruit, vegetables.
All those kinds of things. Obviously not necessarily replacements for plastic here.
Right.
But something to just be thoughtful of as whatever you're consuming or purchasing.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe just to summarize that real quick. So the reason microplastics are bad for humans is because of the chemicals associated, specifically BPA and phthalates are the two that really stand out.
Correct.
That can have negative impacts on your endocrine levels, your
endocrine system, aka like your hormones. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's you're confusing your body basically. Your body is constantly communicating to other parts of your body, and when you consume these microplastics, it's basically interfering with that communication. It's like something's off. That's the way I'd describe it, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a good description. Learning more about our bodies through all of this, it's amazing just how perfectly designed they are. Everything has a purpose. Everything has reason within our body. And things that we're adding, like microplastics, are disrupting the way that our body is supposed to operate.
Yeah, exactly. Disrupting its natural function.
Yeah.
And it's such a complicated mechanism and function. And yeah, exactly. We're disrupting that with all of these man-made things.
Yes. The one that really stood out was like alcohol, when we learned about alcohol.
Yeah, exactly.
The amount of impact that has on our body.
Yeah. If you haven't listened to that one, definitely go and listen to the alcohol episode, which we did a couple weeks ago.
Yep. Okay. So that is some really good information about microplastics and why they're detrimental. Now let's make it real life.
Yep.
Like, what swaps can people make for this?
So we have, I don't know, maybe 10 to 12 swaps here that you can make. So this is probably the most important part of the podcast. So
Yeah.
definitely continue listening here. These are action items that you can take today. Maybe not all at once, but maybe one by one you do these things. And I hope this isn't overwhelming to you, but more educational.
Yeah.
So the first thing I would recommend doing is swapping out plastic cutting boards for wooden or bamboo cutting boards. When you take a plastic cutting board and say you're cutting vegetables on it, every time you cut, you're cutting that plastic, and these microplastic particles are leaching into the food you're eating.
Yes. If you do have a plastic cutting board by chance, just take a knife to it and like shave it.
Yeah.
And you'll see all the little microplastics come off.
Exactly.
Yeah. Very scary.
A little scary, yeah. So bamboo or wooden are going to be your best options there.
Okay.
The next swap is going to be swapping out plastic Tupperware for glass. A lot of people store their food in Tupperware, as do I. And a super easy swap you can make is swapping out that plastic for glass.
And it is the reason for that because the food that's in there, the plastic can leach in. How does that happen?
It can. So if you're storing it in the fridge, the plastic can leach into the food. The good news with that is that you're keeping it in a cool place, and it's much harder for it's much harder for the plastic to break down into microplastics when it's cold. So that's not too bad. But just kind of to avoid that altogether, I'd say go for glass. The number one thing you don't want to do is heating up leftover food in a plastic container because that's a disaster. That's absolutely going to leach these microplastic particles into your food.
Yep. That's when it gets heated up. That's when that's
Exactly.
the issue.
Also, think about it like if you leave a water bottle in your car on a hot day, that's releasing microplastics into the water.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something I recommend avoiding.
Yeah, that's a good point. People maybe not thinking about that because it's not like you're heating it up or anything, but naturally it's just heating up.
Being heated up.
Yeah.
So swap out the plastic for glass Tupperware.
Okay.
And this is that's pretty inexpensive to do.
Yeah.
If you have a Costco membership, they have you can buy a 6-pack, I think, for less than $20 of glass Tupperware. It's not.
This is something I just did. Is swap this out. Yeah, it was very inexpensive.
Yeah.
And
easy to do.
Yeah.
And just throw away get
rid of the plastic. Yeah.
You don't need it.
No, yeah, just toss it. It also feels just so much nicer.
Yeah.
The glass.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then you can heat it up in the microwave too and have no problems.
Yep.
Okay, so that's number 2. Number 3 is going to be swapping out plastic lined cups for stainless steel. When I mean that, I really mean like if you go to Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts or something, yes, they're paper cups on the outside, but they're all lined with plastic. And you can see this. Next time you go to Starbucks or something, or a coffee shop, look at the cup. The inside is lined with plastic. And what are you doing when you're getting coffee?
Putting hot liquid in there.
Hot liquid with plastic. What did we just talk about?
Yeah, bad.
So that is releasing microplastics into your coffee, into your hot coffee. And this is difficult. I mean, I'd say the best option is, make your coffee or tea at home so you don't get the cup at all. You can also bring a stainless steel cup to the coffee shop. Maybe ask if they can just put the coffee in there. I've never done that before, so I don't know if they'll do that for you.
Yeah.
But maybe if they say no, then maybe still bring a cup, and then as soon as you get your coffee, immediately pour it into the stainless steel
That's
cup.
true.
At least the longer it sits there, the worse it gets.
Yeah.
So if you can do it right away,
Better.
I
And Starbucks will. If you bring a reusable cup, they'll fill it up. It's actually cheaper. I think it's like 10 cents cheaper.
Oh, really?
If you bring your own cup.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay. So there you
for
go.
most people out there,
you
local
go.
Starbucks,
Awesome.
you bring your own cup.
There you go.
And they're very pro bringing your own cup.
Oh, I love that. Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
So bring your own stainless steel cup, and you don't have to worry about those microplastics.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so that's the third one. What's the next one?
The next one was one that we hinted at earlier, which is the synthetic clothing. So if you can, and this isn't like the first thing I would do.
Yeah.
Especially if you're overwhelmed by a lot of this information, you don't have to do this first. But like we said, maybe a good starting place is swapping out the synthetic underwear or boxers for natural materials like cotton or wool or silk. These are much more natural alternatives that don't have these chemicals and these endocrine disruptors in them.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's it.
That one makes sense. Something we've hit on there before.
Yeah, and then getting back to one of our earlier podcast episodes about salt, we talked about how microplastics can be found in sea salts because our oceans are polluted with these microplastics. So swapping out the sea salt for things like Redmond's real salt. This salt is mined from like an underground cave. It's not from the sea. Pink Himalayan sea salt as well is a good option. That's usually microplastic free. And then also Celtic sea salt is the only sea salt that I would recommend because where it comes from in France, it's not polluted. There's no plastics or microplastics where it comes from. So that's also good to go. But if you can find a brand that tests for microplastics as well, that would be ideal.
Yep. Yeah, the reasoning, just to visualize this one a little bit, when companies are making salt that's coming from the sea, they're effectively evaporating the water and just left with the salt. The thing is that microplastics are not biodegradable. That's why we talked about in the laundry, they just kind of flow through. They don't break down.
They're not filtered out or anything.
Yeah, you can't filter them out. And so that's why if you're creating salt from sea salt, you're not necessarily getting rid of all the microplastics because they don't break down. They're here forever in our earth. So that's something just to be thoughtful of.
Yeah. All right, we've got a few more swaps here, but hey, if you're enjoying this content, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Let's get into the next one here, seafood and beef. So we just talked about this.
Yeah.
These fish are consuming microplastics, and then we in turn consume the fish. We're consuming microplastics. So what do we do to minimize our intake of these microplastics from fish? Well, we kind of hinted at this at the seafood episode that we talked about. And we're referencing a lot of previous
overlap,
episodes, but there is a lot of overlap. Yeah. And you really want to consume, the smaller fish, the less dense fish. So maybe not the tuna or the swordfish or the shark, which are big fish that accumulate not only heavy metals, but also these microplastics. Maybe you look for something like sardines instead, or what's the other one? Mackerel, small fish that maybe don't accumulate these microplastics as much.
Yeah, exactly. They're not consuming the microplastics because they're not necessarily bottom feeders, I guess, but they're also not consuming other seafood that is consuming microplastics.
Right. As you go up the food chain, these fish are going to have more and more heavy metals and microplastics.
Yes.
So we want to basically look towards the beginning of the food chain, the smaller fish.
The smaller fish.
That aren't going to accumulate these chemicals.
Yes. Yep. Exactly. Oh, they also have a shorter lifespan.
Yes.
Which means they're also consuming less.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all connected.
Yeah. And then also the beef aspect to it, there have been many studies that show that conventional beef, non-organic, non-grass-fed beef can contain microplastics because these plastics are getting into the cow's feed, therefore getting into the cow, therefore getting into us when we consume the cow. So another problem and another reason I recommend going for 100% grass-fed, regeneratively raised beef. Some companies will even test to ensure that there are no microplastics in their beef. But if you do go for 100% grass-fed, regeneratively raised beef, like I do, your chances of microplastics and even like glyphosate, herbicides, and pesticides in the beef goes down drastically.
Yeah.
So, and we were talking about this a little bit before we hit record on this podcast, but the nutrient profile of conventional beef versus grass-fed beef isn't that different. It actually they both contain a lot of vitamins and minerals. The problem with conventional beef are all of these chemicals that are in them, like glyphosate, like pesticides and herbicides, and like microplastics.
Yeah.
Which is why I recommend going for 100% grass-fed, regeneratively raised beef.
Yeah. A couple episodes ago, we were talking about everyone has a certain budget that they're working with, and if you are working with that certain budget, then prioritize almost like the snack foods, the processed foods, to make sure if you are consuming processed foods, they're high quality processed foods. And if you have leftover budget, then you can get beef, maybe not 100% grass fed.
Yeah.
Because I'm just thinking about that as you're talking about this. This is an area where you would want to prioritize that grass fed beef if possible.
Yeah. I mean, if you can.
Yeah.
But again, I'd say I'd still go back to what we talked about earlier and say, you really want to be minimizing the vegetable oils, the processed grains, and the added sugar, which are going to be found in your heavily processed food.
Okay.
So I would still, if you're really on a budget, I would still say, hey, go for that conventional beef and buy the healthier processed food, crackers, whatever you're going to buy.
Yep. Okay.
It's tough.
It is. Yeah. Everyone's got to prioritize something.
Yeah.
So that's good to know. I just want to make sure that we're kind of bringing this all together.
Yeah.
Here.
That's a good point.
Yep. So that's even what I would consider healthier food, seafood and beef. can still contain some of these microplastics.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a lot of swaps there. Just want to maybe pause here for a second. You mentioned a few. If you were starting on your health journey, which one would you start with out of the 5, I think, or so that we've mentioned thus far?
Out of the ones we've mentioned, I would definitely. Oh man, that's tough because a lot of these.
Yeah.
I mean, the cutting board and the Tupperware for sure.
That would be
they're just so easy and not that expensive.
It's a good place to start.
It's a good place to start. Yeah.
And you are most people are using a cutting board almost every time they cook.
Exactly. And storing your food.
And storing your food.
In plastic or plastic containers.
Yeah.
Maybe those two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever use like Ziploc bags?
I do use Ziploc bags
For food at all?
Yeah, like if I have Parmesan cheese or something.
Yeah.
What I do,
Uh-huh.
and now there's studies coming out showing that parchment paper can
really?
have chemicals
Oh my
in it as well,
gosh.
which I thought was the best
Yeah.
non-toxic thing to use. And now I don't know what I'm supposed to use, but normally I would wrap, so for example, I don't use plastic bags for a lot, but one thing is Parmesan cheese. So I wrap it in parchment paper and then I'll put it in a plastic bag.
Okay. I wonder if the what is it? Parchment paper has the microplastics too. What's like tinfoil? Could you use tinfoil to wrap
No,
it?
I think that's worse.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
worse.
Yeah.
Do you use tinfoil?
Aluminum? No, I don't.
No.
I don't even have.
You don't?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is because of microplastics or something else?
No, aluminum.
Oh, aluminum itself.
Aluminum itself. Yeah. You don't want to be putting that in your body.
I guess would aluminum be a heavy metal?
Yes.
Okay, so
Aluminum
that's what we
heavy
talked
metal,
about with like
and
seafood.
It's naturally found in the earth, and it's naturally found in a lot of foods. But yeah, we don't want to be like artificially putting it in our body.
Okay.
Especially like cooking with it.
Yeah.
Heating it up to high temperatures.
Sometimes I'll put it down on like a baking sheet.
Yeah.
So that I don't have to clean the baking sheet.
Yeah, I used to do that.
Yeah.
Use parchment paper.
That's better.
I thought it was. Now I don't know.
Rethink everything.
Yeah. If anyone knows a non-toxic
let us
paper
know.
or something to use, let us know. This is something probably the next thing I'll do research on is this parchment paper because I've been seeing a lot of videos about it recently.
So Ziploc bags or Parmesan cheese is the main use, I
me,
guess.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of other areas where people use Ziploc bags. Not necessarily a Ziploc bag, but like plastic. Because it's the holiday season right now,
Yeah.
a lot of people are making Christmas cookies.
Yeah.
And a lot of people put icing in like a Ziploc bag and then just cut the end and use it to make the icing. I don't know if like little things like that can add up.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's the biggest deal because you're not heating it up and you're kind of just using it once and then it's done.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good point. All things to think about.
For sure.
And it's not, that kind of reminds me, like, it's not about, being perfect. It's about reducing our exposure to these microplastics where we can. And I think Tupperware and cutting boards and a few other things we're about to get into are the easier ways to reduce our exposure to this.
That's a good point. That has to be your mindset here. Otherwise, you will get overwhelmed.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are other areas too?
Yeah. Let's keep going through these. So avoiding single-use plastic. So obviously water bottles. If we can avoid that whenever we can, that's going to be great. Straws. I mean, bags, like plastic bags, things like that.
Yeah.
If we can use reusable bags, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
But then also, since I just said the water bottle, I want to get into a filter, a water filter. A lot of tap water can contain these microplastics as well. So it's very important to get a high quality filter. And this is one of the reasons I love a reverse osmosis water filter because it literally filters out everything, including microplastics. A lot of these Brita filters out there, no hate on Brita, they do a good job of filtering out certain things, but not everything. And one of those things is microplastics. So that's one of the reasons I love a reverse osmosis water filter because it filters out these microplastics, which are in our tap water.
Yeah. Again, we had a whole episode on water and learned a lot on that one.
Yeah.
And that was one of the main takeaways I had was how beneficial a reverse osmosis filter is.
Yeah. So I'll leave a link to one of my favorite brands, AquaTrue, in the description as well for at least $100 off.
All right.
I think they're doing. Actually, I think they extended their Cyber Monday sale as well until December 6th, which is Wednesday, which is today.
Today is Wednesday. Yes. Yes. So yes, AquaTrue, I feel like they got some good deals right now.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like
checking them out.
$150 off, I think.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for a good Christmas gift,
Yep.
if you're looking for a good way to treat yourself,
Yeah.
check out the link below. Super inexpensive too. They're only a couple. You can get one of the filters for a couple $100.
Mm-hmm. And you don't have to change them that often too, is what
The
you're
filters,
saying.
yeah, you don't. It's
Yeah.
like once every 6 months,
Yep.
once a year, and it's 3-stage filter. But yeah, we'll leave more information
For sure.
in the description. So that's a big one. I'd say that might be, like, getting back to your earlier question, that might be my number one.
Is the water filter.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because it's something you're literally drinking all day, every single day. So to getting a high quality filter, I think, is extremely important. And also, going off that, I just posted a video about this. Getting a shower filter
Oh, yeah.
is also important.
Yep.
Because that's also going to be filtering out not only microplastics, but also pesticides, herbicides, medications, all of these things that are winding their way up in our water.
Yep. Yeah. Between, I guess, those two, you'd prioritize, though, then the water filter because you're consuming it directly rather than through the shower?
Probably,
Okay.
yeah.
That'd be where you start.
Yeah,
Okay.
that yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, personal care products, like we mentioned, a lot of these personal care products can contain these microbeads, and it's important to look for, all natural, non-toxic products. If you see something that says microplastic free, that would be great. But there's also a few ingredients that you should look out for, like, and I'll leave this in the description so you can kind of save it down, but polyethylene, polypropylene, polyethylene. There's a couple other ones.
Yeah, these are some
I can't
some
pronounce
hard words
these,
to say. But yeah, definitely have been shocked by how much is out there in personal care, both the primary and secondary
Yes.
microplastics that we talked about.
Exactly.
This is one area. Are there certain brands that you use that you recommend for, like, shampoo, soap?
I like shampoo and conditioner. I use the brand Acure.
Okay.
But there's a lot of other good
lot of good
non-toxic
ones.
brands out there.
Yeah.
If you don't follow our sister Carly,
Yes.
at Clean Living Carly on Instagram, you should pause this episode and do that right now,
Yes.
because she has so many non-toxic swaps, whether it's face wash, shampoo, conditioner, body wash, makeup, everything.
All of it.
And yeah, she's got you covered there.
Absolutely.
So definitely give her a follow.
Yeah, she just turned me on to a company called Jack Henry.
Yeah. I've heard of that one.
Yeah, so I ordered some stuff on Cyber Monday.
Oh.
A bunch of stuff from
What'd
them.
you get?
I got a face cream. I
Yeah.
got new deodorant. Because
Oh,
I
yeah.
use just, like, Axe deodorant.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So baby steps.
Baby steps. Yeah. No.
And then like a shampoo or like a face cleanser.
Oh,
to
nice.
use in the shower.
Yeah.
So they had some deals on Cyber Monday.
Yeah.
So Jack Henry, I like that
That's
brand.
a great brand for men.
For men,
And
yes.
We'll leave a description. We'll leave a link to that as well in the description. Their products are fantastic.
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like them.
Yeah, in terms of ingredients too, like it's just great.
Yep.
Okay, so just a few other things.
Yeah.
Avoiding, like we already mentioned, avoiding heating your food in plastic containers in the microwave or leaving your plastic water bottles out in the sun. This can leach these microplastics into your food or your beverage, whatever it may be.
Yeah, one thing real quick on that.
Yeah.
Plastics is a lot of, like, frozen foods that you'll take them out of the box and they'll be in a plastic container and then it'll be like poke the top with a fork.
Yeah.
And then you'll put all of this plastic. That's something
In
to
the
be
microwave.
in the microwave. Sorry, in the microwave to heat it up. Frozen foods. There are some good frozen foods out there. I think you've highlighted some on your
sure.
stories. But if you're consuming it with plastic, it's something to be careful of.
Yeah, definitely heating it up too.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's where you want to watch out. So
Yep.
if you are consuming those foods, which is
Yeah.
fine, frozen fruit, frozen vegetables comes in plastic.
Yeah.
Hopefully, since it's cold, these microplastics aren't leaching into the food as much as they would be if it's hot. And yeah, definitely transfer that to a plate or glass container or something, and then
Yes.
put it in the microwave.
Exactly.
Natural cleaning products, another thing to look out for. A brand like Branch Basics is my personal favorite. There's a couple other non-toxic brands that are great. Filtering our tap water, which we already talked about, very, very important. Check out AquaTrue down below. And then just, an overall thing is just try to consume as much fresh, whole foods as much as you can, because this should ideally contain less of these microplastics than the processed food.
Yeah, consistent theme throughout all of the episodes. That's what it gets back to.
Eat real food.
Real food.
Yeah. All right, I think that's going to be it for episode 24 of the Clean Kitchen Podcast. If you found this helpful, go ahead and share it with a friend. Subscribe on YouTube, leave a rating and review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and we will see you next week in episode 25.